Guys, I think we're in open discussion part now, right? I just want
Yeah.
to, because when I do editing, I'm gonna have to slice all this up. So this is our open discussion.
Yeah, open. We're open now.
Okay.
But yeah, I've talked to a couple of people. I'm trying to get more people from the metamaterial and photonics group. There's also a lot of photonics conferences that happen, and I want to start going to more of those and trying to meet more contacts within that industry. At some point, I do want to travel to Nova Scotia and take a trip up there. Maybe not, right away, but that's the biggest company in the world that currently makes metamaterials is in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and it's called Metamaterials Incorporated. And they have a lot of experts in this field that they kind of saw the potentials and got into it early on. And there's a lot of real interesting people that are doing a lot of work affiliated with them. And but that's up in Canada, right? So.
Well, I'm glad like this community is at least trying to answer those questions. Like, you all talk about a lot more nuts and bolts issues that are important to UAPs and USPs. And I was at the SCU conference with Mr. Boyd, and they're just not asking the same questions. It's not nearly as in depth and not nearly as thorough and reasonable. I respect the group a lot, but it's well funded, and that's about all it has going for it. Like, I think I discovered your all's channel first, and it set my expectations a bit too high going into SCU.
Yeah, man. I mean, people have high expectations, and they have this they want like this well-produced, perfect content, and we don't have that yet here. We're just kind of, operating on what we have, and it's all been.
It's better. It's better because people can engage.
It's a lot better.
I try to make it as open as possible too.
You didn't have a dialogue at all there. It was like you couldn't even talk to each other. You weren't even allowed to show your image. Every time
it was embarrassing how bad that thing was set up. You had to go into this crazy app in order to ask a question. You had to find the chat group for that specific conference thing. You had to sign up for that conference for that specific speech. Then you had to ask a question in their little app, and it had to get upvoted in order for the presenter, what was his name? The guy in charge, in order for him to ask the question.
Richard
and there was no follow-up. And at one point, there was actually somebody who unmuted herself, really bad girl. And he tried to shut her up, tell her to go. No, it wasn't Amy. To tell her to go into the app and do it. And she's like, yeah, but it's not working. Let me just ask my question. And that was the one rebel that actually made it through the.
I couldn't get the audio to work on in the app Zoom meeting. So then what I would do is I went to the Zoom, had a separate, and then but the problem was you would try and put your questions in the chat mode in the Zoom, and they didn't see it because you had to go through that other thing that Mark's talking about, which didn't work.
the Wahova app, yeah, and it was really none of the speakers were really based on the actual technology. They were all either theoretical or history lessons, and really nothing there was nuts and bolts. But it was a great recruitment opportunity for me. I went around communicating with everyone, telling them about APEC, and I think we did see some new names here today.
Yeah, we did.
And hopefully we'll see more of them in the future. But really, I don't know of any conference that's like APEC that's doing what we're doing. And we reached out to Lou Elizondo as well. Tim did, in order to get him onto this panel. And
yeah, we got to keep having these panels, man, because I really feel like every time we're talking and bringing up, we're getting closer and closer to the truth. I feel, because we're entertaining more hypotheses from more, educated and well-rounded skeptics and also believers, and the more we have these open debates with people who disagree, the further we're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, I could have continued that debate with Jeremy and what was his name? One of the presenters for quite a while. There was actually a couple things that I didn't bring up. But Lou Elizondo, more importantly, he responded saying that he is looking into APEC and seeing what we're doing. He just doesn't have the bandwidth right now to, to talk on our show. But we are getting recognition. People are noticing what's going on here. And I saw a couple new faces this week, and it's pretty exciting. I'm actually in talks with Sam over here, Sam Thompson, about coming down to the lab to get his hands dirty with some actual tech. He was asking me whether it's worth reading Paula Violet's book, Some Quantum Kinetics. That book is a recipe for a migraine headache. Like,
Yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. It's really cool. It's just, it takes some time to get through each page.
Yeah, I mean, the theories are great, but like it goes to a level where he says, we don't have the equipment to even test this. It's not possible to have the equipment because of the way, his theory works. It's all great. I mean, if you can't test it, then who's to say it's real or not?
It reminded me of the dark energy presentation at SCU.
So George,
That was pretty cool. That guy's actually coming down to the lab next Friday. This coming Friday, we are having the heads of the physics department of Albany are driving down here for a field trip, and one of them is an EPR expert. He heads up the physics department at Albany State University here in New York, and they're going to be coming down here to check out the whole setup. So Sam might be coming down to help me get ready and dress to impress. That'd be exciting.
so who's George Knapp? He contacted me at the conference last week.
George Knapp is a radio show host, and he's a pretty old timer in this field. Aiden, do you know?
He brought in Bob Lazar, and he did the whole thing with getting him on TV in Las Vegas. He's a reporter for like Channel 8. He's friends with Rob.
He's
Robert-
done way more. He's done way more to expose Bob Lazar than I ever have. But he's never put it all together. And I don't know. It's like he just needs to come clean on that Bob Lazar stuff. But I want to see Chris Mellon. I would love to get Chris Mellon to get on the show, man.
Aiden, real quick.
Yeah.
I noticed earlier you said you're in Taos, New Mexico. It's like my favorite place to ski on the planet.
Oh, well, yeah,
I'm out there, dude.
I'm a fourth generation Taoseño with a little bit of land and water rights. So,
Yeah, Taos is a hidden gem.
yep, Eden. It's Eden hidden, and I've got some good friends up in the hills, and have some. We grow a lot of things around here. So, but yeah, it's also where I saw my first optical cloaking event. So, Jeremy, I've seen optical cloaking employed by the aliens twice. The first one was in 2010, and a pair of large discs or crewed vehicles came down and released a flotilla of small spheres that just within 30 seconds or so just weren't there. I was with a coworker at O'Reilly's, and we went through this whole dog and pony thing of like, I'm not seeing them, where'd they go? And you still just see two vehicles, and the next day in Cimarron, New Mexico, there was a whole sequence of small crop circles reported. The second time I saw optical cloaking used by the aliens was down in El Paso. We were picking up a pressure vessel for a pumpkin cannon, and we were at a giant junkyard. And there was this, looked up and I saw this thing doing, at first I thought it was like a bag doing a whirlwind or in a whirlwind, because it just kept doing little like semicircles, and then it did a real strong lateral motion and then stayed still. And by that time I was like, whoa, the yard manager was walking by, and I was like, do you see that glowing thing right there? And he's like, oh yeah, I see them all the time here. And then I'm watching, and out of the clouds come two dots that circle around the vehicle and then go to like, say 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, wow. So there's this like large, 3-pointed thing. And then it was a sphere. It was dark. It comes out and then it just spins apart into nothing. And while the vehicle and the two dots are still there. So that clued me into the fact that the platform is still, but it's that the propulsion field is spinning around the vehicle. And conservation of energy has to be conserved. And I think the optical wavelength, they're just spinning it up into UV light. So they're not optically visible, but they're still there in UV light. And then it's just on the spherical platforms. There's UCAV is the word I use, unmanned combat aerial vehicle, some of the crewed vehicles have little small spheres, and the spheres, when they're just released with the initial inertia from whatever the docking mechanism is, they can just float, and the propulsion field turns them invisible. So it's a fucking terrifying thing to see. And that opened up, Paul Murad started talking with me because I'd seen that. So I do have a paper somewhere on it that came out recently. I'll have to forward it. I'll put it in the WhatsApp group here in a bit.
Cool. One thing I was going to mention, it's not necessarily the propulsion field. If this Alzaphan theory pans out, dynamic nuclear orientation can also account for invisibility, because what we're seeing when we see matter is light bouncing off, not the matter itself, but the electron field around it. So if you can orient that electron field so it's no longer incoherent and it's all on one plane, then from most angles, a atom would become invisible.
Well, from the side in the 2010 event, they're just whoop, they're gone. You're like, it was very because my mind, I'm sitting there trying to count what I'm seeing, and then all of a sudden I'm going through the count, and I'm like, there's less, and where are they going? But the 2012 event, I was underneath it, and it's like I need to work with a CGI artist, but you get a ball. Imagine a spinning ball, and it spins the parts, and then all the parts just disappear as it's spinning apart. So, kind of like the snap in.
You think it was going warp, and that's why it was disappearing? Because it was
No, it was coming down. It was coming down into Ciudad Juarez when they released it. It was like, it was.
It went down to where did you say?
I was in El Paso, and it was down in Ciudad. The aliens were fucking around with Ciudad Juarez because it was getting. There was a whole bunch of murders and stuff going on. If you look at it, like it built up around 2010 to 2012-ish. And right around then, it's just like the murders and all that just kind of stopped real quick. And the maquiladoras, the cartel, and they were interacting with our civilization. So, but mind you, I've lived around Albuquerque. I have like David Mathis, who was on here. I met him in 2014 because a flap of 10 flying saucers came over. They always come over the Populous Center. They in Albuquerque, they come from the north and float over the Air Force Base.
Yeah, I have relatives in Sandia.
Yeah, well, so it's, I don't know. I call bullshit. They penetrate our airspace all the fucking time. Like the C-130, the Talon that they fly over Sandia, they label it as training flights, but part of it, they're just having to do constant circles over the Air Force Base. Sandia Labs is the heart of the nuclear weapons manufacturing program now. And everything's underground, but let's start living in Albuquerque and working around the labs and start learning things.
Yeah, so one of the most interesting things that Lou Elizondo said, I'm pretty new to this whole UFO thing, but I didn't really become a believer until I saw the Tic Tac stuff, and I heard Lou Elizondo talk about the 5 observables. And yeah, he was talking about how the UAPs are really attracted to our nuclear facilities, not just ours, but the Russians and the Chinese. I just think
Yep.
that's really worth talking about. Like, perhaps we should get rid of these.
Well, so a couple of years ago, the Russians had they do all their testing way north, right? Look up like the Tsar Bomba, and there's a little bay up there. And what year was it? Within the last 5 years, they were testing their hypersonic missiles. They must have had a hot warhead or something on there, because it was like in August and they launched it and it was like, and it was it failed. They didn't say why it failed, but I did work with Jared Tarbell on the UFO versus nukes, the Robert Hastings thing. Jared Tarbell is one of the founders of Etsy, and so yeah, he was an executive producer for 100K. But so we worked, I got up to speed on some of Hastings' research. So that kind of clued me into that, and watching the fact that hypersonic missile test failed. And Russia was like, well, we don't know why it failed, but pretty sure some guys came down and they just followed along with it and knocked the fuck out of the air, excuse my French, but yeah. So anyway, I yield the floor. Albuquerque, it's a hot spot.
How many years do you all think humanity is off before we can develop transmedium craft, or pretty much anything that can do any of the elements we're seeing from a UAP or USP?
I don't think we have the capability now.
I think 70 years ago.
And I think so too, yeah. I just don't know why it's not.
I think we're technologically we're capable, but we're culturally behind. I think a lot of it has to do with our government structure. Myself, I think we should replace it with an app.
Well, it also, to me, it raises a really, really important question, which is, these things make a nuke look archaic because you can accelerate pretty much anything faster than the speed of light, and it can just do tremendous damage. You could probably vaporize the moon, as far as we know. Like, you're like the last Star Wars: The Last Jedi. You just hit hyperspace right into the super carrier spaceship. Like, it's a super weapon, and there's no legislation or any politician talking about how to plan for the safe implementation in society of these ideas, because they're only being developed by the military-industrial complex. And if that's going to happen, then we're going to get weapons. But we need to start planning for how to make the stuff safe, not weaponize.
That's why we don't have it, is because it's only being done by the military, and that technology. That's why that technology is there. If there's other cultures that aren't as violent as ours, I would think that they'd feel afraid to share that technology with us. Because of that, I think we need to learn to get along with each other before anybody else will want to get to know us.
Yeah, I just think it takes planning for what that legislation is going to look like. You need to start making a legal framework for an international coalition that's going to inspect people and make sure they can't make weapons out of this technology. Humans are going to make it inevitably. It's not about if, it's when. So got to plan for it.
So Sam, what's your day job?
I'm a criminal defense legal assistant at a law firm in Winchester, Virginia.
You're a what?
A criminal.
I'm a legal assistant in a law firm in Winchester, Virginia. We do criminal defense and civil litigation. So if you're in trouble, come on by.
That explains your posture.
So you have a legal background, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so
Well,
if we get sued by Corey Good, we'll call you.
Yeah.
He's a criminal defense. If you get busted for driving under the influence, that's
Yes,
who
got you.
So what should we do? Refuse the breathalyzer, or
What should we do? Whatever the officer says.
So is Corey Good still alive? I heard he died.
Oh, he's very much alive. keeps on posting on Facebook about his latest conference and shit. And I think he's suing Gaia or something like that. Yeah, lots of people are suing Gaia. So is Jack Sarfati's also talking about suing Gaia.
What's
God.
Gaia is like the Netflix for all things alien, meditation, yoga. It's, you know,
Crystal energies.
yeah, everything mixed together, the entire field, like a Netflix of all that kind of shit.
I sue the government. That's my hobby, and the key is you got to have an actual what's called an injury in fact. So just don't sue them because you think they did something wrong. You got to actually have an injury, like a receipt. It's like when you're going to sue the government, you know, they say, oh, we're going to fine you this or we're going to charge you that. Always pay it. Pay everything they ask for it, and then say, I protest.
I should warn you guys, there's a patent troll, a really aggressive one that's been emailing a bunch of us. And he just sends a whole bunch of crap. And then if anyone talked about it on APEC, you know, related or not, he comes around and threatening to sue unless we pay him some money. He's based out of Texas. I should get his name again, but there are some really aggressive patent trolls out there that will, you know, stop at nothing to try to make a penny.
Well, once you pay those cockroaches, they never go away.
Yeah, exactly.
So
If you have a good patent lawyer, you don't have to worry either. So
Yeah, I think in the history of patents, there's very few cases that have actually completed a trial.
yeah, usually they settle. My cousin is a patent lawyer that typed that all they do is litigation. So there are some patent lawyers that's all they do. So
Yeah, but from what I understood, there's very few cases that actually finish trial because you got to teach the judge, you got to teach the jury or whoever it is going to be, like everything about your science. They got to figure out whether it's prior art. Most of these cases ended up with.
well, one I'm familiar with is the one of Apple versus Samsung.
That's a famous one that actually, yeah, that was a very big money one. Yeah.
They had to pay out billions to Apple for
And
that.
you know who was involved with Samsung before Apple got the patent? David Alzafon. And he was actually on the team pushing them to go for, you know, for this one button touchscreen thing.
Huh?
They actually had that design months before Apple went for the patent. And the answer from the execs was, oh, the touchscreen is too expensive. They paid through their teeth for that afterward.
Remember those touch screens and programming, what was it? I used to do embedded. That was in early embedded stuff. That's all they had is touch screens for your buttons.
Yeah, the first one was invented by a company called Crestron Electronics down in New Jersey. And they actually use it for home automation and integration or automation. It's like an automated, it's like an automation, but it's integrated automation. So it's multi-platform systems. So you can do like audio. They did a lot of media and video and audio switching and stuff like that. They make a lot of stuff like that.
well, the reason why companies pay patent trolls is because it's cheaper than the alternative. By the time you go through the lawyers and the courts, patent trolls have a huge amount of money. So they're able to drag your company into bankruptcy and then get you for pennies on the dollar. And we've not had this problem, but we planned for it. And it's something that we've been planning for a long time.
When can we overthrow the patent trolls and, you know, make patents illegal and insolvent?
Even better, rethink the legal system.
Yes.
Well, I have insurance for mine. So there's a legal insurance you can buy.
It's just ungodly that, you know, someone can just take the patent or own the rights to a song where all the people who wrote it are now dead, and they just, you know, it's just like they can't just play it for free on the radio. Like some guy's got to charge for it. And
Well,
monetizing.
you can blame Congress for extending the copyrights to 160 years. Congress did that. You know that, right?
That's pretty stupid. 160 years. That's a
Will's
good
right too, like,
paper, I would think.
Will makes a good point. Like, if you have your own company in tech, you have to be prepared to you have to have your own lawyer attack dogs ready to defend you, because if once you just get into the ropes with another legal team, say civil court, they can motion you at the end for all your attorney's fees if you lose the case. So the winner wins huge. You just do not want to be on the losing side once you get into it. So it's just,
That's not true. The lawyer wins big.
Yes.
yeah.
And he would know. But we also know that to be true too. It really is the lawyer that walks away with a lion's share of the cash.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
The lawyers, because a lot of the criminal justice system is like organized by lawyers that organize things behind the scenes, and it's like all payoff. It's all there's so much corruption and
When I
examples
look
of it.
to hire a lawyer, what I look for is the biggest asshole. Because I have this one lawyer, he sued judges. He sued the Superior Court and won. He used to work for the ACLU, and he had this bailiffs union hired him because the judges were making the bailiffs do their laundry. And so they hired him to do a civil rights lawsuit, and he won against the judge because they were really doing it. And I figured, oh, that's a guy that I want, because most of my attorneys, I have the judge says the word sanction, and they're like, they all fall apart. Oh, don't sanction me. He's like, he doesn't even flinch.
I found the email, by the way.
That's the guy you want.
If you guys ever get an email from Michael Edward Sampson.
Samsung, like the phone?
No, Sampson.
And so Samson, like the guy in the Bible who took out Delilah.
No, Sampson. Sampson.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, if you ever get an email from him, just like delete it or send do not respond. Yeah, spam him. Do not respond to that guy. He'll send you his all his secret patented pending shit. And then if you ever talk about it, he'll say, that you stole it from me.
I don't know, Mark, I get shit like that all the time, to be honest with you. And I look at what their patent is, and I just kind of shake my head and I go, okay.
I don't think it's illegal to talk about a patent or a patented item. I think the only my understanding, and I could be wrong, a criminal lawyer can tell you this, but my understanding is that unless if you're not making money off of it directly, like you're not producing it and making money, there's no leg to stand on.
That's right. You got to have an injury in fact. Like I said, if there's no injury, you're done.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can even build something like word for word from a patent, but as long as you're not selling it to make money, you're in the clear. Like if you're just doing it for your own fun, then it's fine. No one's harmed.
Or even at a conference, because we do these things all the time, and certainly we don't get sued, or there'd be no conferences. So.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I mean, another issue is
lawyers conference that would still go on.
you could be issued a patent even if it's invalid. Like it could be based off of prior art, or it could be too general. Like you can fight the patent after it was given if you're being sued over it. So there one of the famous cases of a patent, a big patent war was between the Wright brothers, and this was one of the books that I read before getting into this field, and I realized how useless patents can be. they got a patent for wing warping, which is another word, flaps. You can't build an airplane without flaps, really. And they just spent most of their life after inventing the airplane, suing the Curtiss Airplane Company for patent infringement. And the legal battle was intense. One of the Wright brothers actually had a heart attack after he left court once, and he died. And then it ended during World War I, I believe, when the Army got them both into a room and said, "This is your settlement. Sign right here. We need airplanes." And in the meantime, the Germans were way ahead of us, and everyone else had working airplanes, and they had to start from nothing because they were just fighting over it.
Well, that's the public version.
That's what I read in the book. It's actually a very good book. You should read it sometime about the Wright brothers if you ever have time. But in a nutshell, that's what happened.
Wing warping was their brilliance, actually, because that's really what we're working on today. And so no doubt it was a brilliant concept.
So I actually hope that all this UAP stuff turns out to be alien, because if you think about it, then if the government reverse engineered it, they don't have any of the patent rights because they didn't invent it.
It's not government. It's
That's a great argument.
I mean, look at the Pius patents. They're all owned by the nation.
Michael, dude, like what I've seen is not us. It's like the vehicles, we're talking an operation, a scope of operation that lasts like 5 minutes most. You're up, let's say you're operating out of Nevada, Area 51, and you want to nuke, I don't know, Russia, right? So you're up at flight operations. These things go whip, 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 whip. They skip, right? They space fold. You're over Moscow, maybe 90 seconds from the time you're up. You sit there silently, and then you release these spheres which cloak, and they go woo. They're floating invisible bombs, and you go whip, 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 whip. You skip the fuck out, and pop, 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 pop. All right, it's not us. We would have nuked Beijing by now if we were allowed to.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's us. I'm saying if they reverse engineered it, then
they probably have. I've got
the lawyers from the alien planet would come and sue the governments.
No, that's right.
I think they did. That was like 1952, and the Granada Treaty or whatever. Eisenhower went into it, right? Like,
yeah.
Just tell you what, man. If aliens have lawyers, we're fucked.
Yeah, well, just
have that plague forever.
Up before the Galactic Court.
The only other time I've heard about the Galactic Federation was this kid. His dad was a photographer for the CIA. He was the guy that sits in the back seat of the SR-71, and he had a terminal that he figured out how to. He got his dad's. They have a. Are we still fucking live? Or I should shut up soon. Anyway, this kid hacked his dad's work terminal, and ding, 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 ding. This is Albuquerque. Like, there's all these professionals around there. He talked about the Galactic Federation. He talked about there's something underwater. There's like mermen or something. And then, I was trying to get him to come over to the makerspace, and he's like, no, I'm still on federal whatnot. I can't log on. I can't use computers for another like 18 months at this time. This was 2016.
I really wanted to talk to Nick Pope about the reptilians.
I thought about it.
Talking to Nick Pope about reptilians.
Well, David Icke is from his home country, right?
Yeah, those guys are probably asleep now.
Yeah.
Well,
It's the ones that aren't gone down in their dungeon that turn into a reptilian, right?
well,
Michael, thanks for not asking him that. I don't know if we would be able to get him back.
Oh, yeah.
when I started asking about getting, why don't, what was the other guy's name?
David,
Milburn. Frank Milburn.
Yeah, I started talking about, hey, why don't we just like hang out with the Russians and the Chinese and try and figure out what's going on. I kind of like got the feeling that didn't go over too well with him. And then, but then Nick, he seemed like he was open to the idea of, hey, what if they don't know what the hell's going on? It just, it's like everybody thinks everybody else is putting something over.
so sorry, what's your name? Sam. So Sam, what brings you to a conference like this, being a lawyer?
Well, I'm not a lawyer. I just work for one. I gotta be clear about that.
Good disclaimer.
Well, I studied biology at the Virginia Military Institute, so I'm a geek. I'm a nerd. I love sci-fi. And after seeing the Tic Tac footage, I just thought to myself, oh my God, I've been denying it my entire life. And now that's pretty much irrefutable smoking gun evidence that there's something out that we don't understand. So then the question moves from like, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, humans are going to do it. So now that we know these things can happen, we have to stop talking about whether it's possible or not and start talking about what do we do now? What's the next best step for research? What material science we have to look into? So
you said
I'm here to learn. Yeah.
You said Virginia Military Institute?
Yes.
So you're an officer?
No, it's not an academy. We commission about 50% of our graduates from there.
I see.
Yeah, I did 2 years there, and I remember doing organic chemistry in the rain and just thinking to myself, the Army is certainly not for me.
Wait, did you say
do it?
Or Army?
I was in Army ROTC, and
Okay.
I remember I was doing organic chemistry problems in the rain for a field training exercise, and I realized I hated the Army at that point, and I didn't want to commission.
I see. Yeah, well, I was actually in Air Force ROTC, and then I joined the Marine Corps. So
It's an intense switch, but good for you.
Yeah, I missed the draft. I was too young and then I was too old.
fortunately, I wasn't drafted. That would have been awful.
Oh, there you go.
My cousin was drafted. So
My dad, he was in the Navy, and my grandpa, he was a colonel in the Marines and a captain in the Navy at the same time. That's because he was hanging with Admiral Byrd and people like that, I guess.
We're in contact right now with Alexei Chekarov about his device, and he just actually responded. He's very afraid of the technology either being stolen or people ending 6 feet under. What's your thoughts on that right now? Asking in general, like in the current climate, do you think that's what they're still doing?
I think he's probably it's better to be safe than sorry. I would agree with him, but I think things could be changing in the near future because of what's going on right now. What we're in the middle with, so much stuff coming out.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to push is that, that was 20 years ago. Right now we have, ever since that New York Times article, December 16th, 2017, ever since that, there's been a monumental shift in the attitude of the secret space program, whoever's pulling the strings. And I think these new concepts and inventions will be met with a different light, especially now that we have APEC. We can literally show you a working prototype on the air and everyone can verify it in their own lab, because until we get to that point, your invention ain't worth shit,
Yeah, until everybody has one and they can look at it themselves and say, oh yeah, this works. No, I agree. That's why with my invention, I'm trying to use it for something else, like a cryptographic device or something like that.
I wish there was a university studying that shit. I mean, if I would have been a physics major, if I would have known like UFO physics was a thing.
It's not. We're making it a thing. I mean, Jeremy went to college. He got a bachelor's in physics, and we have the heads of the physics department in Albany coming down here to the lab to check this place out and see what's up. I mean, physics obviously missed something because these UFOs are flying around, and they don't have any clue how that happens. But on the other hand, we know physics is missing shit because they don't even know where inertial mass comes from. We don't have a complete explanation of gravity. We've got lots of theories, but none of them are really proven. So there's lots of holes. And one of the things you end up with going to college, and
that's my theory, it's a lot of holes.
I can't say this about everyone, but it does sort of pat your ego to spend 7 years working on a PhD, and you get this basis in the current dogma of physics, and you sort of close your mind to any new ideas. And anyone who comes by and says, oh, here's free energy device, you're like, nah, that can't possibly work. I'm going to go back to my lab and work on this COVID vaccine or whatever I'm doing. But yeah, you get what I'm trying to say. That they're not. They sort of become closed-minded and join the cult of science when you spend that much time of your life working towards your PhD. So
yeah, I never wanted to go for the PhD because I didn't think it was fun. I go to school right now. I've been going to school my whole life. I go to school for fun. And I always thought a PhD wouldn't be fun. So why do? That's what's missing from physics is the fun. It's kind of like when I was a physics major at the university, I used to go look over, it was a 6-story building. I look over on Friday afternoon, come out of advanced lab. There was one woman in my graduating class, and I look over at the geology building next door, and over on the second floor, they had on the top of the building, they had a kegger. And there would be all these grad students, and there were actually women there. And so I always thought, oh, this is why I don't want to be this sucks. The geologists, they have all the fun. And then when I became an archaeologist, it wasn't because I was so much interested in archaeology, but they have great conferences. They're a big party. And they have like more women than men.
Oh, wow.
It would have been fun though. I mean,
what's missing is the fun. Okay. And that's what
physics would have been so much fun if you could like throw up some of these theoretical ideas and you just work the problems with your friends. So you're going to be up until 3 a.m. anyways in a STEM field in undergrad. So you might as well grind UAP physics.
It's not that women are stupider than men or something like that. I would never say something like that. But I think what happens is it's part of our society that we look at women as they have to be beautiful. And from a young age, we tell them, oh, you want to be a beautiful woman, one day. And that's what they want to grow into. Whereas men want to build shit. We sort of discourage that with girls. And that's that probably leads to the problem that we see. There's not a single woman in this room right now.
That's changed with the last generation. Like I was with the Liftport group, I was Elsie. There was a couple of us that were working as mascots, or this mascot. This is early Facebook, like 2012, 13. But the whole STEM thing, they were reaching out, like encouraging women to be more hands-on with science, and engineering and such. So it's the wave is picking it up. There's a lot more female empowerment here in the United States. So expect younger, prettier faces trying to beat the shit out of you with their left brain. So
I had that once with a girlfriend.
yeah,
She
the solar decathlon group, we had LN. She was just hell on wheels, and then she, you know, you get into equations and shit, and you're like, okay, like, yeah. So
imagine having a fight with your girlfriend about what the meaning of magnetic moment.
yeah.
I experienced that. And the crazy thing was that she was right.
That's an accomplishment, I think, Mark.
Yeah, you probably know her, Amy Eskridge.
That name sounds familiar.
Michael, you worked for NASA at some point, right?
Me? No, I didn't work for NASA. I worked for Hughes.
Oh, okay.
Aircraft.
Okay, sorry,
How long do you guys think it's going to be before universities start picking this stuff up and offering courses where you can study ideas, pushing the boundaries like this?
I don't know, maybe next week.
It's already happening. It's already happening. It's just very encoded in specific words that you don't know what, you know, it's compartmentalized, pre-planned compartmentalization, and it's distributed in certain universities. So, I mean, Mark and I were
You'll see it at the community colleges first, and then and as the community colleges, it's like right now when I take anthro, they'll have like classes in what they call like queer culture. You know, it used to be they didn't talk about LGBT stuff at all 10 years ago, and it had nothing to do with anthropology. And but now they have classes on it. Okay, and so why wouldn't in a few years they'll have classes on this kind of stuff? And they'll start at the community college, and then eventually they'll get to the ivory tower.
I wouldn't be surprised if many of the APEC conferences over here become like historic. You know, like this is where things started. This is where, well, Mark McCandlish gave one of his last, you know, in-depth presentations right here at APEC. So there's a lot of history being seen right here at APEC.
What would be cool is if something like APEC, if there was a place where you could write peer-reviewed articles where you could get them published, because right now this when we talk about academic community, we're not talking about the classroom, we're talking about getting published in peer-reviewed publications. And there's lots of peers out there. It's just that they're going to get the cojones to put their name on being a reviewer.
What if APEC did its own?
Yeah, I mean, that's very simple. We could, you know, if you have a paper you want to put out, we could send it out through the same email subscription system and say, you know, here's his paper. You have 2 weeks to review it, and he'll give his presentation. He or she will give their presentation in 2 weeks.
It's like a subject matter expert. Like, say, I wrote a paper on space-time metric engineering. I'd want Hal Puthoff to be on the reviewing committee that looked at the paper. You follow? That's what I'm saying. Is you want someone who has the subject matter expertise that would be able to, that's recognized, to be able to then be on a reviewing committee, because there's going to be a lot of papers, obviously, in the beginning that aren't going to make the cut because they're just not used to that kind of peer-reviewed environment.
Well, so I've got one paper. It was I finished in 2014 of when I was still at Cosmiac, and I sent it into Bigelow Aerospace and Colm Keller. It's the only paper I've had like even close to being peer reviewed, but it was like on the building up a production line for flying saucers. Like, just spent the time like breaking it down into like, you know, GNC, your propulsion, your power plant, your human factors, or the crew capsule, and then And so I put in a couple little hooks, and one of the reviewers caught it, and he was like, "Oh, this guy doesn't fucking know what he's talking about." I was like, I put that one in there on purpose. So always you got to put in a hook or something in order to see if they're actually reading it or whatnot. But I'd love to throw that one back in. It's out there. I don't know. I know more now, but I wrote that one within like 36 hours. Just sat down. Anyway, it was good writing.
But writing, that's how it becomes more legitimate, when you have published papers that are recognized by a peer reviewed journal. And that's, like I said, like you were saying, Mark, we just started out as something small. Maybe a publication comes out once a year or something. And then over time, it could be the accepted thing. That could be the APEC journal.
Yeah, there's also no reason to stop with just the Zoom conference. We should definitely have an in-person one at some point, and really get to see everyone, and book a hotel.
Yeah, that's
conferences.
That's a little more expensive though. That's costly. I mean, I wonder how much a SCCU conference probably costs a boatload of money, I would think.
Well, if you guys are coming out to Tesla Tech, just talk with the organizers there. They'll give you some heads up on it.
Where's the Tesla at?
Oh, that's in Albuquerque in August.
Cool.
It's
Yeah,
real close.
I got a speaking spot there.
That's an idea.
You're in the Kofi section, right? Or with Tom Vallone, he brought you in, or was it
No, it was I just contacted Mr.
Steve?
Elkridge or something like that. His name is Steve Elkridge.
Steve? Yeah.
And he got me the last slot. And the darnest things happens with these slots. Every time I speak at a live conference, the date and time are just like the weirdest thing. The first in-person speech that I gave on the subject of anti-gravity, it was originally supposed to be on February 16th, but then they pushed it forward because somebody else, scheduling conflict. It ended up being February 2nd, 2020, which is 02/02/2020. It's like the 2020 of 2020. And it gets crazier. It was supposed to be at 2:00, but the guy who was giving this speech in 2 weeks had us push it off because he wanted to give his presentation or his update. So I started at 2:20, February 2nd, 2020. This next conference, the one in
You're a numerologist now, huh?
yeah, my numerology is crazy. This next one is on Friday the 13th at 1300 hours. That's when I'm scheduled to give an update on the latest experiments and stuff that we have going on here.
You survived?
I don't know.
Someone in the comments recommended a APEC journal. I think that's a pretty good idea. Like, it doesn't have to be like as formal as, like peer-reviewed, the best of the best organizations for literature like that out there, but it can just start from something. So you have an open dialogue of ideas being exchanged, and then you guys can build off of each other's mistakes, because there isn't a single expert in UAP propulsion right now. Like, we're all just trying to fucking figure it out.
Not publicly.
I was actually trying to point out that actually there is such a journal that will be here within probably the next 30 to 40 days. So, because my servers are hosting it.
Who are that?
What's the name of the journal?
Well, I don't know the name yet, but
That's
the software is being installed on my servers. My servers,
That's good.
I have servers that have very high bandwidth, and so such a site is actually already underway.
Do you know of any journals talking about like the Pais patents in detail. Like I haven't been able to find anyone besides on here talking about the line items of the Pais patents and what works and what doesn't.
Well,
The drive, Brett Tingley he's the guy that leaked, he's the guy that originally got them released. You're familiar with him, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, there's nobody diving into like the real deep physics of it.
yeah. He published some really interesting support papers that supported the ideas in the patents. Like he published a compressed fusion device, and read through that, it blew my mind.
Which one are you
And-
talking about, Pius?
Yeah, it was a recent publication for a compressed fusion device, and it's
Yeah, I saw that.
mind-boggling. If it's right, it's the solution to fusion energy, and that's another holy grail of ideas to crack. And I just haven't found anyone going through the path of that and figuring out if it would work. Because I think it's fascinating, but I'm just a geek.
I'm out of the loop here. What are we talking about here?
Pais is the guy who published those crazy UFO patents
For
for the
the
Flying
nation.
Triangle. Yeah, and he also published some support papers independently of the patents, just talking about the ideas in the patents.
I didn't see any such papers. Where are they?
It's Brent Tingley, is that what you said?
Yeah, sorry, Brett Tingley. He's the guy that originally released or
What's that?
tracked down the Sal
Yeah.
Pays research.
You'll get the
US
you'll get
Navy.
the patents from him, but I don't think you're going to get the research papers that Pais wrote separately from the patents supporting his ideas in the patents.
I actually have because Pius's patents were using spinning discs and piezoelectric devices and all kinds of stuff that's in my patent, I felt concerned. So I did a number of FOIA requests, and I got all his papers, and I got all the patent paperwork and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And he also did. He did get some funding to do a experiment on one of them, but there was no positive results reported. So
Yeah, they got like $500,000 to do that test, and the basis of it was using these PZT materials to create room temperature superconducors, which I thought.
his stuff isn't far enough. It's too far away, is what I think's going on. He can't see those effects because it's all he's doing all far field stuff when he needs some near field. He needs to get closer.
It's metamaterials.
I
And
read the papers. It's not difficult to build the devices that he's talking about. We can actually build those things. So, but yeah, I mean, the Pazio and all these things are all very simple. So there's nothing in the patent that I found that's beyond our science.
Yeah, me too. So I didn't say. At first, I was concerned that he had, quote, reverse engineered alien technology.
but that's also
And then
why
when
I think it's
saw
weird
what
that,
the technology was. I go, oh, I don't think so.
yeah, I mean, I think
Actually, I looked over some of those patents, and they are very reminiscent to what we plan on doing with the Alzaphon experiment. And if this works, the idea is to flip it inside out, have the electromagnet inside the craft, and then the craft hull will follow the field lines at their, whatever magnetic strength you want it at, and then you'll have microwaves inside a cavity at the edge of the craft, which is what is described in the Pius patents. But
But isn't that also the Philadelphia experiment in a nutshell?
no, I think the Philadelphia experiment used really thick conductors and high current impulses.
It had an electromagnet going right through the center of the hall.
you all see that. This is
Yeah.
the one
Microwaves.
I'm referencing.
A compression fusion device enabling nuclear fusion ignition.
Yeah, it came out like
Yeah,
I think
the
in 2020.
Right.
But he has like a few articles like that backing up the language of his patents, and he goes into detail on that one about pressurized fusion. I just think it's super interesting, but I'd love to hear a conversation with people talking about it, because I haven't been able to find that yet.
Well, I like to read the paper because I can't talk about what I can't read.
Yeah, I would, what's that's the title of it?
I'm just gonna put in the, yeah, that's the title. I want to put in the group chat what website's from. In fact, I'm just gonna Google it and then
I've
post
just
a
put
link.
a link in the chat. Yeah.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, Rob.
Hi.
Hey,
Tim,
guys.
uh,
Yeah, I was gonna make, actually, I was gonna make Mark the host and I hit the wrong button, so I made Will the host. So Will, you can keep it or you can pass it out. I usually make Mark the host. I gotta go clean up the house and
My screen looks the same. What's
I
different?
gotta go make dinner.
What do you
I'm gonna
mean?
post this link.
What's that mean?
But it's been fun, guys. This was a really good one. And Tim, that panel thing was a great idea.
oh, thank you. Well, no, it was Mark's idea. That was Mark's idea. He was like, why don't we do a panel? I wish I'd figured out
Classic.
Zoom.
That was classic. See, if you could do that with some other people, that I think that did that get a lot of hits, Jeremy?
Well,
That was the most popular point in the whole stream today, man. That got a ton of people interested, and that was a great discussion that we were having. So.
what I figured out in the future, just for future references, Zoom lets you spotlight multiple people, which is what I should have done at the beginning. I didn't know it would let me do that. So if we do another one, what we do is we take our host people or whatever, and we spotlight them, and then they'll always be there. And then we'll probably I spotlighted myself because I'm asking the questions, and then you could just do that. And you can keep it for Q&A, or you could turn it all off like I did and just go back. So it's pretty cool setup.
Oh yeah, that was awesome. That was awesome.
Yeah, I just wish I'd known in advance. I didn't even know that was available, or I would have done it like that to begin with. So.
Well, I just wanted to give you some positive feedback before I take off to go make.
All right, man. Well, we're going to close down the live stream and go into private discussion. So, hey, thank you everyone who's watching in the live stream for joining us today. We're going on 6 hours now, man. That was epic. Truly awesome. We have to do more of this in the future. Once again, yeah, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.